Hello everyone, my name is Remy. I come from the eStaker and Stakehouse community, and I'm here to guide you through on how to do alerting for an Ethereum validator. So I'm gonna be following my written guide on this. If you don't know where to find it, I'll be in the description below. So let's get started. First, what is alerting? Alerting is simply the art of getting notified when there's issues rising up with your systems, right? So one of the common issue, which is going to happen to almost every Ethereum validator, is low disk space. Because of the client's database growth, right? So eventually you might need to prune your database, or you might need to resync from scratch, but you'll want to know when your disk is out of space so you can start that process. And that issue can be like you can be notified for when you're close to running out of space on your disk. And so I'm gonna guide you through on how to get alert for those and some other potential issue with your system. So this guide is meant for people with no or little experience. I'm gonna guide you through all the instructions and the different steps. The main reason why you want to do alerting is so that you can get automatic issue detection, so that you can also have issue prevention and notification like I just mentioned. So here's an overview of the different tools that we're going to use for this setup. If you have not already installed the Prometheus and Node Exporter, you can check out my previous guide. I'm going to also include a link in the description below so that you can follow it and install those tools. So we're going to assume that you already have those tools installed, and we're going to add Alert Manager, and we're also going to be using PagerDuty. So in this setup, Prometheus is our open source system monitoring tool. It's also going to be configured to verify that some of our metrics are within our expected margins. So we're going to add rules to Prometheus and make sure that that those rules are being followed, and Prometheus is going to check all of those rules every so often. Alert Manager is a tool that will handle the alerts sent by Prometheus, and it's going to route them to PagerDuty. PagerDuty is simply a large online incident response platform. It can be used for a wide variety of incident management, but in our setup, it's simply going to receive the alerts from Alert Manager, and it's going to notify us when there's an issue with our system. So the whole diagram of this setup looks a little bit like this, right? So you've got Prometheus, which checks your rules and sends the alerts to Alert Manager, which routes them to PagerDuty, and eventually PagerDuty will notify you through different means, either by email, SMS, or whatever you want to use to get notified. So let's get started. We'll start by creating an account on PagerDuty. PagerDuty has a free trial. Eventually, when your free trial ends, you can migrate your plan to a free one. So you don't really need to pay for it. If you like that tool, maybe you can get started with a paid plan and use some of the advanced feature, but we won't need those features in this configuration. So let's get started and create an account. Here I'm on PagerDuty's website. I've got this 40 days free trial available. I'm gonna use disposable information for this account here. So let's get started with my email address. First name, my last name. Let's create a simple password here. It has to have 10 characters. Demo alerting with Remy. Hopefully this is unique and it should work here. I think I'm good here. All right. Now I'm being asked to create a service. I'm just call this my validator. I don't need to integrate with any tools here. I'm just gonna skip this step. It's asking me for a phone number where I'll be able to receive SMS alerts. So let me use this disposable mobile number here. Eventually we'll be able to see if we manage to receive SMS alerts. I can send test notification. Let's try it. Let's see if it works. And this is just a welcome screen. Nothing special here. So it triggered one incident already, just so we can test if we received it. Here you go. You can see that in my inbox, I received an alert from PagerDuty. This is just the example incident. I don't need to act on this alert. I don't need anything special. And I'm now on call for my alerts. Right, so I can delete these. So it seems like the test notification worked here. Let's delete this and let's check out our SMS here. Let me try to complete this CAPTCHA here. I need to pick up the trains containing a train. Here's one. Here's another one. I guess this is one too. Let's see. Submit. Alright, I have my alert here. Alert number 1 on my validator, which was the example incident, right? And so if I were to be using a real mobile phone, I could reply 4 to acknowledge on the alert or 6 to mark it as resolved. And you can also like manage those here, right? So let me just acknowledge this alert, this incident here, which is just an example, and just resolve it, just to have a clean slate here to get started, right? So now I don't have any active incident on my PagerDuty board. All right, so my PagerDuty account is created. Now I'll have to add integration so that I can integrate between Alert Manager and PagerDuty. I have to add another integration on my service. So let's go back to my incident dashboard here. I'll click on my validator service, the one I initially created. I'll go on to the integrations tab. I'll click add integration here, and we will choose Event API v2, which is the interface through which Alert Manager is going to communicate with PagerDuty. So I just click add. And now I have to expand this block here and copy the integration key, right? So this is the key that's going to be used to tell PagerDuty that I'm the one sending or triggering alert or resolving them, right? So let's note this integration key, and don't reuse mine. It's not going to work. I'm just going to make sure to delete this account after I'm done with the demo here. All right, so I'm done with all I had to do with my account on PagerDuty. Now the rest of this guide is gonna have you executing some commands. You'll see all the blocks that start and the lines that start with a $sign is a command that you'll need to execute in a terminal. So I started my terminal here, and make sure not to copy the actual $sign, just copy the command that goes afterwards. Right, so let's start by installing Alert Manager. First of all, we'll create the user, the user account under which Alert Manager is going to run. Don't forget that when you're using the sudo command, you'll have to enter your account password, and then it should go through. If not, you'll be asked for your password multiple times, and if you fail, you can just restart the command. Let's create the configuration and data directory with the proper ownership. So I'm just going to copy all of those commands here. And now for the ownership of those directories, we're making sure that they're being owned by the new Alert Manager account that we just created. Now I'll download the latest stable version of Alert Manager at this URL. I already have an open tab for that. So the latest version is 0.23.0. So let's download it here. And then we will verify its SHA-256 checksum. Just make sure that we're not using some kind of wrong archive here. So the checksum is this. Let's make sure that it's the correct one here. And I just search for it, and I can see that the SHA-256 checksum here is correct. It's the one from the archive I just downloaded. Now let's extract it. And we'll copy the binaries to their proper location. There's two binaries, but the main one which is going to be used is called Alert Manager. Oh, I believe I forgot to copy the sudo part here. And we'll change those binaries ownership to be the one under Alert Manager. All right, let's remove the download leftovers. We won't be needing those anymore. And let's start working on the Alert Manager configuration file. Right? So it will be in this location. So let's open Nano to edit the file, the configuration file. And here I have to paste the following content here. But one thing I have to change is the value for the routing key here. I'll have to use the integration key I just created on my PagerDuty dashboard with the Event API v2 integration. Right, so let's just copy this whole part, and we'll replace this part here with my integration key. All right, let me see. This was my integration key. There we go. Now, once I'm done editing my configuration file, I can just exit by pressing Ctrl X, and then pressing yes to save the buffer, save the file, and then I press enter to confirm the file name. Right. So once I'm done with adding this configuration file, I'm just going to change its ownership to be the Alert Manager account. And we'll start the setup for the system deep service. So let's open our new service definition file, and all I have to do here is I just copy and paste this part, and that's going to create a new system service for Alert Manager. Now we'll reload system D so that it can see our new service. And we'll start it. See if it works. Let's check its status. Alright, we can see here it's running. And then we can see a few of the logs down here. Like we're looking for this kind of message here. Completed loading of a configuration file. And then listening address, which means it's now listening for incoming alerts from Prometheus, right? All right. And so that's pretty much all we had to do for the alert manager service. If we want to make sure it's always going to start on boot or when we reboot our system, we have to enable it. So let's do that right away with this command. And then we can go through the next section, which is going to be to configure Prometheus to use Alert Manager. So the first part is going to edit the Prometheus configuration file, which should be this one. If you followed my previous guide, but on most guide, it should be that file as well. Right. So the part which we are most interested in is the Alert Manager configuration section here. And so what I'll have to do is remove most of this part and just replace it with what I have in my written guide here. Let's remove everything and just copy and paste this. All right. I'm gonna exit and save the file. Now I'm gonna add a new alert rules file, so we can add rules for alerting for Prometheus, right? So let's create that file with our editor here, and I'm just gonna copy and paste the different rules here, which are like good base rules that you can use on your system, and I'm gonna explain them afterwards, right? So let's copy and paste this. Everything seems good. Let's save this file. And so let's start with explaining what those rules are, right? So you've got 3 rules here. The first one is going to test your disk space and make sure it's never below this value, which is in bytes. But this is around 80 gig, right? So that's our first rule. The alert is going to get triggered when your disk space is below 80 gigs, right? So if you want to change that value to be something else, you can go ahead and change it. But 80 gigs should be a good value to give you plenty of time to start like either pruning or see how you can reduce your client's database usage. And so that's the first rule. The second rule here is the memory available, right? So this is going to make sure you always have at least 1 gig or around 1 gig of available RAM on your system. Like if you're constrained on memory on your system, like if you have a bunch of processes that are using a lot of memory, maybe you'll want to change that value, but 1 gig should be like a good average value for most people. And then the last rule here is going to check if your CPU usage is too high. And so for this rule, it's going to check like if your average CPU core is above 90% usage for at least 5 minutes. Right, so if that's the case, it's going to trigger the alert, and then you'll receive a notification. Right, so those rules are explained here. You might want to like tweak them a little depending on your system and your usage. Since we added a new configuration file for Prometheus, we'll have to change its ownership to be the Prometheus account. So depending on your system and your configuration. Maybe you're using a different account, but if you followed my previous guide, it should be this one, which is simply called Prometheus. So let's do that right away. Now we will restart our Prometheus service and we'll make sure that it's still running properly. And let's see its status here. Alright, it's still active. Let's see if it was able to load the configuration file. Yes, we can see here message is saying completed loading of configuration file, which seems to tell us that it worked properly. We don't have any, we might have had like a typo in our configuration file, and it would have said here something like unable to load the configuration file, but it seems like it's working properly now. Alright, so I believe that's all we need for now for actually having like a working alerting setup. Now it might be worth testing those rules that we just added. So let's start by testing the available disk space rule. Right. So let's first start by checking how much disk space I have on this system. So this is a validator running on the Praetor network. So it might not be using a lot of space, but you can see that the main mount is slash here, which is like the root of the file system. Its size is 916 gig, and it has like 787 gig of space available, right? So I got plenty of space, since like Praetor is not going to be using a lot of space, since there's not much transaction on Girly, especially the F1 slash execution network it's using, but still it's still a good practice to have alerting on this system here. And so now if I wanted to test my like 80 gig rule limit of available disk space, I could create a dummy file for this, right? And so if I wanted to test it, let's see, not this one, I could start my calculator, right? All right, so let's see. So I have 787. If I remove 80 gig, I should create a dummy file that has at least 707 gig of space, just to try and trigger that rule, right? So let's see if I can do that. Let's use a slightly larger value just to make sure I can trigger it. So if I want to create like a dummy file, one of the easy command for that is something like this. So this command will create a 400 gig file, in a few seconds. But let me create like a 740 gigabyte file, right? And so if I create such a file, now if I check my remaining disk space again, I should see that I have only 47 gig left, right? So that should trigger my rule. It should take a few seconds before the rule is actually triggered, because in our rule here, we said that we wanted this alert, this rule to be breaking for at least 1 minute, right? So I'll have to wait at least 1 minute before this get triggered. So let's see. Let's go back into my PagerDuty dashboard. So the rule has not been triggered yet, but once it is triggered, I should see a new incident here, and I should also receive an email, and I should also receive an SMS on my on the SMS phone number I configured on my mobile phone, right? So let's wait a little, see if this gets triggered. And one other thing that you could also check out is connecting to Prometheus to see if your alert are triggered. That might be something I will add into my guide, but maybe you can check it out right away. So let me see the actual Prometheus service. So it's listening on this address here. So let me see if I can connect there. All right, you can go connect to your Prometheus web server and go into alert. You'll see that I have one active alert here, which is called available disk space too low. So it's firing right now. So it means that on my incident dashboard here, if I refresh, I should be able to see a new triggered alert, right? And so, and if I check on my mail here, I just received a new mail telling me that my rule called available disk space too low was triggered, and eventually I'll have to do something about it, right? And let me see if I received an SMS about this. I'll have to complete this captcha again. So let me select the cars. I guess it's a car, or those are buses. I don't know. Let's not select those. Those are truck or buses. Let's see if it worked. Maybe I didn't receive an SMS. Maybe I have to configure something else in PagerDuty for that. But I can see that that this was fired. This incident was just fired for my validator. And then I can acknowledge it. Acknowledge. So this is just some kind of incident management that you can do on PagerDuty, right? But it will be automatically resolved once the disk space issue is resolved as well, right? So since we just created a new dummy large file to trigger our alert and to test it, we can just remove it and end the test here. Right, so I just removed the dummy large file that I created to test this rule. Let me see the remaining disk space, right? So you can see now that I'm back to 787 gig of available space on my disk. And then if I go back into the Prometheus interface here, you can see that now the incident is not triggering anymore. Right, so it should eventually get automatically resolved. Like eventually alert manager will see that the incident is not firing anymore. I believe it'll have to wait like 1 minute again, and then this incident here on PagerDuty will disappear and it will be marked as resolved. Let's see, let's wait a little. Let's wait a little more. Like you can see here in my alerts on Prometheus that the available disk space too low is not triggering anymore. Let's see if it was resolved. It's not resolved yet. While we wait for this, let's check out the second test that I want to do for those rules, right? So if you remember, I added a rule to make sure that I always have at least 1 gig of RAM available, 1 gig of memory. So we could also test that rule, right? So let's first check on how much memory I have left on this system. And you can see right now that I've got a total of like 15 gig of memory. Maybe that's not actually precise, but we'll see. 4.7 gigabyte of memory is being used, and I have around 10 gigabyte of memory which is available, right? So we could try to fill at least like 9 gigabyte of memory, so we can trigger this other rule that I added for Prometheus, right? So if I want to use like, if I want to use memory just to test this, I can use a command like this, and let's see if I can use like 9.5 gigabyte of memory here, maybe 9.6 even, just make sure I can trigger the actual rule. And we will open a new tab here in my terminal, and we will see in my new tab if all my memory is being used, how much memory I still have left, right? So you can see now I'm below 1 gig of memory. I'm at 686 megabyte of memory available, so that should trigger my rule in Prometheus, right? You see now that the available memory too low rule is active. It's not triggering yet because we said that we want to wait for 1 minute. Like we're actually waiting for the memory to be below 1 gigabyte of memory for at least 1 minute before the actual rule is being triggered. Let's while we wait for this to be triggered, let's see if the other incident was resolved. Yes, you can see that our previous incident about the available disk space being too low was automatically resolved by Prometheus and Alert Manager. So they communicated with PagerDuty to resolve that issue. So now we are waiting on the available memory being too low rule to trigger. And once it'll be on the firing state, Alert Manager should communicate with PagerDuty, and it should send and it should create a new incident. We should also receive a new, this was the previous alert about the available disk space being too low, but we should also receive a new email regarding this one. This is the new one we just received about our memory being too low, right? And so if we go into our incident dashboard on PagerDuty, we can see that now we have a new incident being created about our memory being too low here. So I can acknowledge it. Like you don't really need to acknowledge your incident in PagerDuty if you just want to receive like notification, but maybe you want to manage those potential issue with rigor or discipline. Maybe that's something you want to do. It's all possible with PagerDuty. All right, so now we saw that our test work, and it seems like the command here just stopped. I don't know why, but it did. If we look back at our available memory on this system, it went back to 10 gigabyte. And so the alert should stop being triggered, and eventually it will also resolve in PagerDuty. Like you won't receive an email when it's resolved, but you will receive an email or an SMS when it's actually being triggered, right? So which is what you want. Like you want to know when there's a potential issue with your system. Right, so that's pretty much it for our test here. I don't know why this comment here stopped, but like if your comment does not stop, you can just press Ctrl+C in your terminal to end it. And so that's pretty much it. If you want more support, if you need help, if you have any question regarding this setup, this guide, make sure to get in touch with the EveStaker community. We have a Discord, we have a Reddit. We'll be happy to help you from here. So thanks for watching. I hope you like this guide. I hope this can help you with your own system, and I hope you appreciate it.